Hello and welcome to Shoot the Hostage. I'm Dan.
And I'm Sarah.
We're a movie show that delves into a different film each week based around a theme. This season the theme is criminals. Like all good podcasts, this show contains explicit language and mature content, as well as major spoilers for the movie we're covering. Season 2, Episode 2.
Yep.
We're still on criminals.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing Hell or High Water.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, this was your pick.
I guess it was, yeah, because I love the movie so much.
Mm-hmm.
Alternative title, Rootin' Tootin' Tapestry of Texas.
There is an alternative title.
Yes, there is.
If you want some trivia straight off
You
the
want
bat.
trivia now?
Why not?
Okay, go for your trivia.
Original title was Comancheria?
Comancheria.
Comancheria.
Comancheria, yeah.
So I was trying to discern pronunciation based on the word Comanche. So
Yeah.
Comancheria? I don't know.
Sounds right to me, which is a region of New Mexico.
It is.
West Texas.
But I think it's always a sensible choice when people don't choose the title that ignorant white people like myself are going to struggle to pronounce.
Yeah.
Because I'll be embarrassed to ask for a ticket to that at the cinema.
Well, Hell or High Water sort of rolls off the tongue quite nicely as well, doesn't it? That
does.
phrase, we all know what it means. Actually, what does it mean? Oh, it's like that thing when I'm definitely going to do that thing. I promise.
Yeah. It basically means doing whatever needs to be done to complete your task or mission.
Yeah.
But it also has a double meaning, which refers to there's a thing called a hell or high water clause in financial terms. Contracts specifically, usually a lease, which is obviously very relevant to the plot of the film. And it states that payments must continue regardless of any difficulties the paying party may encounter.
Oh, there you go.
So quite a clever title. I'm
Yeah.
glad they went with that.
Yeah. It was the title to go with in the end.
Yeah.
Definitely made sense. Came out in 2016.
Yep.
It was directed by David Mackenzie, who's a Scottish filmmaker.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah. He made Startup and Outlaw King.
Yeah, I did go through his filmography, and although I recognise a bunch of titles on there, but I don't think I've seen a single one outside of this.
I've definitely not seen Outlaw King. I think I may have watched the first 5 or 10 minutes of Startup and was I don't fancy this. It seemed okay, but
People seem to like it.
yeah, no, it had good scores and ratings. I just don't think I was in the mood for it when I put it on. So I am not very versed in the world of David Mackenzie either. But I'm a little bit more familiar with the guy that wrote this,
Yeah.
Taylor Sheridan,
Mm-hmm.
who his first screenplay was Sicario.
What a starter.
Yeah, exactly. And then this was his second screenplay.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So Sicario to start, this for main course.
Yeah.
What was dessert?
Wind River was for dessert.
That's a pretty good meal, man.
Yeah, no, it's a good trilogy of movies.
Yeah.
So he wrote this in 3 weeks.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I say wow. I don't know what the average time to write a screenplay normally is, but that seems really impressive to me.
I couldn't read a book in 3 weeks, let alone write a screenplay. Yeah, so we mentioned that the Sicario was the first one that he'd written. He'd kind of just decided, I just want to have a crack at writing. Been reading dialogue for years and years and years. Apparently had saved all of the scripts that he'd ever worked on and was like, I don't want to do any of that. I just want to do my own thing, kind of thing.
Well, it's funny you say that because I know you never watched Sons of Anarchy, but I was quite a fan of it back in the day before the final season ruined everything that came before it. Hot take. But I knew him from that.
Yeah.
He played like this sort of, I think he was a sheriff.
On a motorbike.
Who was always like butting heads with the bikers.
Okay. Was he also on a motorbike?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But that's what I knew him from.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until we started doing research for this show that I put 2 and 2 together and was like, oh, same guy. Wow.
Yeah. 3 weeks took to write it. They shot the very first draft. They shot it in 5 weeks. So really quick turnaround.
Wow. I did read that they shot Chris Pine's parts quite quickly because he was he had prior commitments with Star Trek.
I think he had to go to Star Trek Beyond, yeah.
Yeah, so they filmed his parts in just a couple, like 2 or 3 weeks, I believe.
Yeah, Chris Pine was on there for, I think, about 3 weeks. I think I heard that too. Ben Foster is also in this. The two leads, aren't they? The two leads. Chris Pine, Ben Foster. They play brothers, Toby and Tanner.
Yep.
Jeff Bridges, the brilliant all-time Jeff Bridges, is in there as a Texas Ranger?
Um,
I don't. What is
yeah.
a Texas Ranger? Is it like a Power Ranger?
But with less cool outfits.
Yeah. Is there a Texan Zordon?
Maybe. One would assume.
Also, Gil Birmingham is in it as
Yeah.
Marcus's partner. And they're the main four.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about maybe the relationships between those characters later on. But just one other note, Amanda Midthunder.
Amber.
Amber. Is it Amber Midthunder?
Is it Amber Midthunder? I thought from Prey.
Yeah.
I thought it was Amber.
We'll go with that then. I've written down Amanda, but that doesn't mean that it's correct. Amber Midthunder.
I thought it was... Oh, now you've got me doubting myself.
Okay, I've got a solution for this.
Editing this out and Googling it.
Amber Midthunder. Amanda Midthunder. See, we'll just edit the right one in and no one will know. It was nominated for Best Picture in 2017, which I did not know.
For an Oscar?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, fully deserved, in my opinion. But
yeah, agreed.
That was the year of the Moonlight La La
Right.
Land debacle.
Okay.
So they never really stood a chance against Moonlight La La Land. I haven't seen, so I can't really comment, but it looks like toilet to me. Yeah, so I would have voted for this one for sure. Oh, giving it away again early. I always do that, don't I? It's a very simple plot.
It's
incredibly
simple, yeah.
There's not much to go through with the plot.
No. I mean, do you want to do a quick synopsis before we get too deep into it?
Yeah, okay. So I've got a little synopsis here on Letterboxd, and it's not a long one, so I was a bit worried because sometimes when there are very simple movies, sometimes for some reason the synopsis are really overly complicated and convoluted.
I feel like distributors or copywriters or whoever feel the need to justify the film's existence by waffling.
Yeah.
And it's just not necessary.
But very quick and easy on this one. So a divorced dad and his ex-con brother resort to a desperate scheme in order to save their family's farm in West Texas. They're basically robbing banks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the film starts. It starts with us being introduced to Toby and Tanner robbing a bank first thing in the morning, as soon as it opens.
It's such a strong start because before we even get to the robbery, there's a couple of kind of establishing shots of this small Texan town, which I think New Mexico was actually a stand-in for Texas. I don't know if they filmed any of it in Texas, but I know a lot of it was done in New Mexico. But before we even get to the robbery, there's some really nice shots setting up what kind of a town this is, who these people are. There's some graffiti on the wall. I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was something about no bailouts for veterans.
Yeah.
Which is a really nice way of kind of foreshadowing like the class and wealth divide.
Yeah.
Which is obviously the theme that is the most prevalent throughout the movie.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as I saw that graffiti, my mind's just taken back to that time just post 2008 where lots of people were having their houses repossessed and a financial crisis. And I guess it's kind of talking about that, isn't it? And, you know, we bailed out the banks, but we can't help out the less fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's for a simple plot. Mm-hmm. This, I would say, the word I would probably use is texture. There's a lot of texture in this film in terms of the way it looks, the way it's shot, the way it's acted, the script. It all feeds into this world that Sheridan has written with, like you say, the establishing shots do that straight away and let you know we're watching a film set in this dilapidated place, run down, people are not very well off and struggling. So straight away it just says this is the movie you're watching, and it's just a really strong start as well. And and slightly different because there's a lot of movies that begin with heists, but this is sort of heist plus texture plus extra. It's not just your average action kind of we're going to rob a bank type scenario.
Not at all. It's a very intelligent film.
Yeah, very.
And obviously we're very early on in our criminals theme, but to go back to last week,
do we have to?
I mean, I'd rather not, but I think a lot of heist movies are guilty of too much setup, and this couldn't be more different to Army of the Dead in terms of that. And that was one of my biggest complaints last week, is that there was so much exposition, so much setting up of the characters, and it was ultimately unnecessary. And Hell or High Water goes such a long way to proving how unnecessary it was, because we know nothing about these people. We see them robbing a bank. That's the first time we're introduced to them. And we don't need to know anything about them. Like, the information is passed out so slowly through the dialogue during the film. And it's so smartly done that I think it sort of highlights what a lot of these types of films get wrong.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think you're not spoon-fed information. It's kind of given, like, as you said, very slowly throughout what you're seeing, but mostly what you're hearing, how the characters are talking to each other when they're referencing past events, like Tanner killing their dad, for example, in a quote-unquote hunting accident in a barn. He's been to prison. But this is all kind of given to you with dialogue, and not just like, hey, stop for a minute.
Yeah.
Do you remember when I was in prison? It's like anecdotal.
It feels more naturalistic.
Yeah, more conversational, and you're getting to know these characters, which is the main reason why I think this script is so good.
Yeah, it's really clever. It's really clever the way it's done. The dialogue tells you everything you need to know, and it's drip-fed, like you say. But also the first heist. I mean, I feel like even calling them heists is perhaps overselling it, because they are doing very small bank jobs to get a more modest amount of money.
Yeah.
So as not to attract the wrong kind of attention. Like, you know, if you go big, you're going to get the FBI on your case. I think there's even a line about that. It's such a small sum of money, the FBI won't touch it. So they're just left with local cops who they kind of assume are less prepared for a crime of that nature.
Yeah. Well, I would hesitate to call it a heist movie. I guess technically it is.
Kind of. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah, it's Toby's plan. His plan is to rob X amount of banks, raise X amount of money to pay off the mortgage on their land, their mother's land, that was left to Toby, and not to Tanner. That's another piece of information that you're given. Like, nothing was left to Tanner in the will, therefore you assume that they didn't see eye to eye, Tanner and their mother. So, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a heist movie. It's a drama with some heisting in it.
Would you call it a crime thriller or a crime drama?
What's the difference between a drama and a thriller?
A thriller is thrilling.
And a drama is dramatic.
I don't know.
I don't know. It kind of seems like the same thing to me.
Well, a drama can be anything, really.
A drama can be a Pride and Prejudice, but Pride and Prejudice can't be a thriller.
Yeah, exactly.
What about Pride and Prejudice and Zombies? Is that a thriller?
No, that was a half-baked turd.
What about
that worked far better as a book than it did a movie?
What about the Michael Jackson music video for Thriller? Is that a thriller?
Yeah, sure.
Is there a movie called Thriller Killer? Is that a thriller?
I don't know.
Is there a movie called Driller Killer?
Yes.
Is that a thriller? Is Driller Killer a thriller?
It's a horror.
How long should we play this game for?
I'm done. I'm happy to move
on. All right, well, thanks for listening.
No, I think, again, going back to that first robbery, we're told so much about these people through dialogue that, well, the dialogue is relevant only to the robbery. They're both kind of interacting with the bank teller before the branch manager shows up. And the different way in which they interact with this woman. Dale Dickey, by the way, excellent character actress, doesn't get enough recognition in my book. But yeah, you immediately are clued into the fact that Ben Foster is kind of the reckless one. He's a little bit unpredictable, a little bit more comfortable with this criminal enterprise. Yeah. And Chris Pine is far more serious, perhaps a little bit nervous, a bit uneasy, a bit more empathetic. So their motives at that point are kind of unclear, but it's obvious that Chris Pine's character, Toby, is a little bit more new to the whole thing. Yeah,
he seems more reluctant when doing the crime bits, and more specifically where people can potentially be hurt.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially when it leans towards violence.
Yeah, he's not into that. And I don't feel like Tanner's character necessarily wants to hurt people. I just feel like he doesn't have that much of an issue about doing it.
Yeah, I get the impression he's just a bit more of a wild card. And I mean, who knows what 10 years in prison would do to a person. I'm sure that's affected him. And also, I don't know, I think he sort of is they're both quite bitter, and quite rightly so. Yeah. Because of the situation they found themselves in. But I feel like Ben Foster's character is more angry about the whole thing.
Yes, he's the older one, right? Ben
He
Foster.
is, yeah. They're both the same age, the actors.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Ben Foster's playing a little bit older.
Yeah, he's the older brother, so I guess he maybe got the brunt of the abuse, as is kind of hinted at, and he's the one that took out their father.
Mm-hmm.
So and then obviously he went to prison. Were we meant to assume that he'd done a stint in the army? Had he done a tour or something? I feel like maybe with his weaponry and the way he just handled the automatic weapon towards the end of the movie, I'm thinking, oh, he's had like some sort of tactical training there as well. So
yeah,
like,
he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I feel like there's just like a rich texture of his character that we're given throughout the film. But I wouldn't say he's quite a wild card, because he does have restraint, and I feel weird saying this, but I feel like this is a restrained Ben Foster, because he can chew scenery more than anybody.
Yeah.
And I enjoy him. I think he's good, but he's restrained enough in this. Like he's definitely a bit of a wild card. He also has an incredibly human side. He loves his brother. He regrets that he wasn't around when his mum was dying. And I don't know, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I appreciated that this film doesn't fall into the trap or the cliche where there's just a wild card and he's just going to ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but that you always get that character in films, and they're going to be the ones that start with the inciting incident or whatever it is. But that character just feels a little bit more restrained. He's doing this thing to help his brother out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's going to shoot some guns while he's doing it and have a bit of fun. But
I definitely think there is an underlying current of he's grown to enjoy crime. So like he's mostly doing it to help out family.
He definitely, he does enjoy the buzz. Yeah, he does. But it's interesting that for me, it was just, there's a bit of everything going on in his character.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And he didn't go so large that I was just like, oh, I can't wait for this character to die or be caught or whatever. Like I'm still kind of rooting for him.
Well, it's curious, isn't it? Because this film is so morally grey, intentionally so. Because even the cops, which we'll talk about at length later, I'm sure, but particularly Jeff Bridges, is very hard to root for. Like his character is very funny, but he's such a cranky curmudgeon who is like outright racist to his Indigenous partner, and his partner just kind of takes it because he knows this. Like there's some love there. Yeah, they've been partners a while, but I don't know. He is hard to root for, and they're on the side of right. Yeah,
and I think the thing about it is the script is good, but also the performances. Jeff Bridges, he's an incredibly charming actor. Like you watch him and I hang on to every word that he says, and he's brilliant in this. He's not quite as good as he is in Tron Legacy, because that's a masterpiece. But
agree to disagree on that one.
But you're right. Like on paper, the things that this guy is saying, you're like, mate, come on.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be doing this. But Alberto is incredibly tolerant.
Yes.
And you feel like there's a history there. So, and also like he's getting towards end of retirement. So I don't know.
Well, this is like his last job officially.
Yeah. Their relationship is interesting because it runs parallel with Toby and Tanner's relationship. And there's kind of a similar kind of vibe. I get like a sibling-ish relationship with them as well. Yeah. Obviously, Marcus is the older character out of the two, and he's about to retire. And I feel like a lot of this movie is about the end of things. So he's getting towards retirement. Some people die in this movie. I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Oof.
Yeah, so I feel like it's about the end of things as much as anything, which I think is what's so interesting about the characters, because they're all talking about the end of things, the start of new things, the cyclical nature of things. So I find that their relationship running parallel with Toby and Tanner's is interesting, but they both also feed into the wider narrative of the plot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Some of the stuff he says, like the insults, because he's making Native American jokes a lot of the time, isn't he?
Awful. But he's so likable.
He's so likable.
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
There's one part in it where Alberto goes, I'm half Mexican, and Marcus says, I have not done with the Native American jokes yet. I'll get onto the Mexican half when I'm done with that. And that's just carried on throughout the entire film. He doesn't let up. It's fascinating that we don't hate that character.
isn't it? It's almost like, I don't want to downplay it because obviously it's in real world terms that those kind of comments and jokes can do actual harm.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to kind of disregard it.
Yeah.
But it's almost become like a bonding ritual for him, you know, like the playground thing of if you pick on somebody, it means you like them.
Yeah.
It's almost like that.
It just kind of feels real. They feel like real characters, because there are people like that. And
especially his age.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's a generational thing, which again feeds into the antiquated systems thing and the start of new things kind of nature of it. He's not a bad guy. He's a good guy.
But he's a committed police officer.
But he says some shitty things that
unforgivable things.
Yeah. And you'd be well within your rights to be offended by that and never talk to the guy or whatever. But yeah, it's fascinating that we get the whole way through the film and we still are rooting for that guy.
Well, I think it's really interesting that he does consider Alberto a friend and vice versa. And like you say, Alberto's really tolerant of him. So I think that's because he knows where his heart is.
Yes. I imagine that Alberto's put up with this for a long time.
Yeah.
And I wonder if maybe because Jeff Bridges' character is 3 weeks away from retirement, maybe he's ramping it up there a little bit because he just wants to have as much fun as possible before he retires, and maybe Alberto is just that little bit more forgiving than he normally is.
Yeah, because he knows it's the end of an era.
Yeah, maybe before that Marcus isn't coming on quite as strong with the insults, and maybe Alberto is defending himself a bit more, but he's just more tolerant and more accepting, like, yeah, okay, come on. I'm looking at his watch, we've got 3 weeks to go. Tapping his watch.
It's gone maximum curmudgeon.
Yeah. But yeah, those two sets of characters in the movie, that's what this movie is. It's you've got Tanner and Toby, and you've got Marcus and Alberto, and obviously one set is trying to outsmart the other set and vice versa. So they're kind of hot on the tail of Toby and Tanner, who are robbing a few banks.
Well, we get 2 robberies before the title card.
Right.
Which I had completely forgotten. Obviously, this was a third time watch for me. And you've seen it quite a few times now, haven't you? 5
or 6, I think, at this point. Yeah.
Which is like once a year since it came out. That's crazy.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah. Which, again, somewhat gives away your feelings about this film.
Yeah. Oh, I hate it. I watch it every year.
But yeah, it's interesting that you point that out, actually, because it wasn't until my third time watching it that I kind of realised the parallels and the fact that the cops are kind of the exact sort of counterparts, counterpoints to the criminals. And everybody is a little bit morally ambiguous. Yeah. Varying scales, obviously.
Well, Alberto's not morally ambiguous, is he?
I guess not. No,
I can't think of
you're
anything.
right.
He seems to be the most altruistic character.
Oh, of the 4, by a country mile, yeah.
Yeah, because obviously you've got the 2 that are robbing the banks, and although Chris Pine is reluctant to hurt anybody, he's
the one who came up with the plan,
he's the reason that all of this is happening.
Well, I think in his mind, his plan doesn't include anybody getting hurt.
No.
Which is not how all of the robberies play out, as we soon start to see. But I think if everything had gone to the letter the way he wanted it to, there wouldn't have been any victims in his mind, because he doesn't consider the bank to be the victim. They're the oppressor. So I think in his own mind, he is the good guy. He's kind of like doing a little Robin Hood bit.
Yeah. Which is a great plan.
Yeah.
And you kind of are on board with that. But the morally grey area, or for me anyway, I don't mind. Rob the bank and pay off your own mortgage with the bank money. I don't
with
care.
Their own money.
It's quite amusing to me. Just don't shoot anyone. Yeah, it is his plan that ultimately puts people in danger. And you're right, like his plan didn't include anybody getting hurt. But the fact that he planned it and
he had to have known it was a possibility.
Yeah, and he knows his brother is can be a bit of a loose cannon. He knows that shit's going to go wrong, really. Like, he's a smart bloke. He knows that there's a chance that things are going to go sideways for people. But it is mostly it's only Tanner's actions that lead to anyone being hurt or killed.
Yeah.
However, I don't think that Toby's character gets away with it if Tanner doesn't do those things.
Oh, no. So, particularly when they sort of, at the point at which they divert their plans to a different bank.
Yeah. Because
obviously they were going to go to one bank and they decide to go to the one that is likely to have more money, I believe. But obviously that's because there's a vast amount more people there.
Yeah. And it's
later in the day.
Yeah. And it's full. It's just full of people.
Yeah.
Which is not what Chris Pine originally wanted. He wanted to hit the small banks early in the morning, small bills, so it can't be tracked. Hit a few of those, raise a certain amount, and go and gamble it at the casino to clean the money.
Job done.
Yeah, but there's a couple of
mitigating factors.
Yeah, the mitigating factor being Tanner.
Yeah.
who does a surprise robbery, doesn't he? He comes out and he's like,
God.
"Surprise, Toby! I just robbed somewhere," and that's where Amber Midthunder comes into play, because she's the bank teller. But I really enjoyed that scene, because Chris Pine is in the restaurant, and he's talking to the waitress and tips her $200, and they're getting on, flirting a little bit, and then Chris Pine's character comes out and Tanner's running across the road with money like stuffed down his jacket, saying, "Start the car, we've got to run," kind of thing. So it's only those things. It's simultaneously the plan works because of Tanner and also nearly fails because of Tanner.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
if everything goes to Toby's plan, I don't think that maybe they do, but I don't think necessarily that they get away with it. I think maybe they get caught.
Yeah.
I think maybe they're still alive, but...
True. It's interesting you bring up that scene in the diner, though, because I think that, again, only on third watch sort of occurred to me how differently the two brothers treat women as well, which I think is a really good indicator of their character.
Yeah.
Because Chris Pine talks to the waitress, kind of sympathizes with her a little bit. He's not very talkative. She's doing most of the talking, but he leaves her a really generous tip.
Yeah.
While his brother is across the street intimidating what looks like a teenager.
Yeah.
To get money that wasn't even in the plan.
Yeah.
And then later when they're at the casino, he's really aggressive to what we believe to be a sex worker.
Yeah.
And I just think it tells you a lot about who these two people are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, I don't know, perhaps that's to do with the fact that Ben Foster's character is a little bit older, was raised predominantly probably by their father.
Yeah.
And then once he went to jail for the death of their father, Chris Pine's character was left with his mother. So might explain why he's got a little bit of a gentler nature and perhaps respects women a little bit more.
Yeah, possibly. He's the older one, like you say, maybe older views. He was exposed to more older views and opinions in that way.
And probable violence.
Yeah. Stint in prison. I don't think it was the killing their father that he went to prison for.
It was something else, yeah. But that obviously kind of potentially set him down the path of a life of crime.
Yeah, and also if he was, if he is a veteran as well, also maybe that boys club army stuff. Yeah, they're very different. The two lead characters, but they're interesting both in their own rights.
I don't know. I just always find it quite interesting when two people raised together can turn out so differently. But I think the script goes such a long way to explaining perfectly why they are the way they are.
Yeah,
which again is just another good example of how smart the dialogue is.
Yeah. You got any standout scenes?
Standout
scenes? Is there anything in it that you remember watching thinking, oh, this is what the movie's about, or just something that a scene that you enjoyed?
I enjoyed all of the dialogue.
Yeah.
It's funny. I kind of prefer the quieter moments to the more thrilling ones.
I think the strength in this movie is definitely the quieter moments and the dialogue. My favourite scene though is when Jeff Bridges and Gil Birmingham are in that restaurant and
the old lady.
What don't you want? You don't want a potato or you don't want green beans. Someone tried to order a trout in 1987. Yeah, I really enjoy that and their stint in that town.
Yeah,
the cop, the two Texas Rangers. And just after that scene, I think is where Gil Birmingham has his monologue about the land being taken from his ancestors by the townsfolk, grandparents, and now the banks are taking it from them. And so it goes on.
There's that moment, and there's the moment in the casino as well, where Ben Foster kind of squares up to the Comanche guy. Yeah. So there's an undercurrent of all of this is stolen. Yeah. He says that's a really nice line as well, actually, that I wrote down, where the Comanche guy says, do you know what Comanche means? It means enemy of everyone, I believe it was. And Foster's character says, do you know what that makes me? And he says, my enemy. He says, no, it makes me Comanche. So that was a really good piece of dialogue as well. Yeah. We haven't even mentioned the soundtrack yet, which I think is probably pertinent that we do mention that, given that it was what's the word? Written, performed, crafted, curated. Composed. That's the word I was looking for. We got
I knew
there.
it was a C word. I was going to go for a different C word, but maybe not.
Keep that to yourself. Co-composed by Nick Cave.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, does he do a lot of film work?
His song was in Dumb and Dumber once.
And the Scream movies, Red Right Hand.
Yeah, that's right. Does he do a lot? I think he's done a couple.
Has he?
Yeah, I'm going to look this up right now because I'm curious. Nick Cave.
Yeah.
I've written down Nick Cave. Nick Cave.
Who's Nick Cave? Yeah.
Film scores.
Apparently he's in Brighton loads.
What?
Yeah.
Brighton?
Yeah, my friend bumped into him in Brighton.
Brighton, England. Your friend bumped into him once, therefore he's in Brighton loads.
Did I say loads?
Yeah.
Frequently. I don't know. Maybe he lives there.
Maybe he's just on holiday.
Brighton's a cool place.
I don't recognise most of these movies. Do you know 20,000 Days on Earth?
No.
Do you know This Much I Know to Be True?
I've heard of it.
Okay, I've not heard of it. Lawless, which is a movie that I haven't seen.
Lawless? The one with Tom Hardy?
Probably.
Shia LaBeouf. That was okay.
The Assassination of Jesse James
by
the coward Robert Ford,
course.
which is a good movie.
Yeah.
Wind River.
Oh,
The Road.
okay.
He's done loads. He's done absolutely loads.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I didn't really notice the music in this. I do know that there was a track called Comancheria I heard on a podcast somewhere today. So I'm guessing that was from when they were using the working title
change. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, it's funny. I remember some of the song choices in this are kind of, again, to take it back to last week, the soundtrack to this movie is kind of everything the Army of the Dead soundtrack wasn't, in that the songs were kind of relevant to what was going on in the film, but it didn't beat you around the head with the subtext of it.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack was kind of, it was very Texan. It was really fitting and quite evocative.
Yeah.
There was some country in there and
Cotton Eye Joe.
Yeah, of course.
I remember hearing that.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't remember being struck by any like orchestral stuff or There were moments, but
it's funny. I've got no memory, recollection, or can name one single note of music in this film. It's not something I paid any attention to whatsoever, other than going, "Oh, Nick Cave," and then didn't think about it at all.
Well, I think the only reason I was paying attention was because I saw his name in the opening credits.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I think I have trouble concentrating on more than one thing at a time. So I was really dialed into what the people were saying and what we were being shown in the frame.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the music and stuff just kind of informed me subconsciously, which I guess is kind of what music should do in a film. Like you do have your moments where you have a great needle drop, like in Edgar Wright movies or not in Zack Snyder movies, as we established last week already. But I didn't really notice it. But I'd be interested actually to, after this, maybe tomorrow, just maybe listening to that soundtrack again and be like, oh yeah, I remember that little slide guitar bit there where they're having a wrestle in the field.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of foreshadowing in this film as well.
Yes.
Did you catch much of it? There were a couple that kind of spring to mind straight off the top of my head. I can't remember who exactly was having the conversation, but there is like the Blaze of Glory.
What, the Bon Jovi track?
Yes.
Blaze of Glory.
No, actually I said Blades of Glory in the film.
Is Will Ferrell in that movie?
Yeah, John Heder, I want to say.
Oh yeah. Before Tremors 7.
Oh no.
I haven't seen Tremors 7 yet. We need to watch it.
Well, yeah, we'll figure that out.
Tremors is a Western like this movie.
Yes.
Tremors 4 is definitely a Western. There's no...
I think that's where the similarities between the movies end, perhaps.
Someone has a moustache in this movie.
How would you feel if graboids had shown up at the end of Hell or High Water?
I would fucking love it. I would be punching the air. I would love it.
Bert Gummer appears out of nowhere in tactical gear.
Oh, that would be so good. But what are we doing for the sequel? Are we doing Hell or High Water tone or Tremors tone?
Ooh. Just 50-50, even split of both.
Are we going to cut the scenes together, or are we just going to do half of Hell or High Water and then half of Tremors? And which way round are you doing it?
Oh, I don't know.
Like
but
a From
Chris
Dusk Till
Pine
Dawn scenario.
Chris Pine would obviously have to adopt the Fred Ward role going forward.
I thought he was going to say Chris Pine would have to adopt a graboid. He's got pet graboid.
That would be a very different outcome.
Guarding the ranch.
But yes, Blaze of Glory, like that line is mentioned at some point in the film, which is obviously massive foreshadowing. That's definitely in the first act.
Yes.
And to spoil something that happens kind of in the culmination of the film, which is Gil Birmingham, Alberto's death, which I do want to talk about, but that is foreshadowed because I think when they're in the small town with the T-bone steak lady, there's a line where he literally says, "It's a dangerous thing we do."
Yeah.
Which again kind of takes it back to season 1, the perils that police go through.
Yeah, see our episode on End of Watch.
Yeah.
I was going to say End of Cops.
End of Cops.
Very.
That'd be a different film. I mean, End of Cops kind of is sort of valid
works
for End of
for that
Watch.
movie, yeah.
But yeah, there is a fair amount of foreshadowing in this film, which I appreciate.
I don't know why, but the death of Alberto always takes me by surprise.
Well, I think it's supposed to. It comes so far out of left field because I didn't necessarily expect any of the main 4 to die. I didn't quite know how it was going to play out the first time I saw it, but I didn't predict anything that happened, which is really interesting. For a film with such a simple plot, it was quite unpredictable.
Yeah.
And like, I think deceptively simple, because I don't think I've ever seen it done quite like this.
Yeah.
Or I should say I've never seen another film with the plot quite like this, despite it being so simple and kind of obvious. But yeah, that just comes out of nowhere and it happens so fast. And it was a real kind of gut punch moment.
Well, like you say, it's been foreshadowed earlier on in the movie, but I'm thinking that that's Jeff Bridges, particularly.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly with what I think the story is ultimately about, the death of old and the start of new. I'm thinking, it makes total sense that Jeff Bridges has been a tired old racist throughout this whole movie. He's going to die,
yeah,
and then Alberto is going to carry on in the force. But I guess you're meant to think that. And if this was an M. Night Shyamalan movie, Shyamalan,
don't ask me. I never know.
M. Night Shyamalan.
Delete as applicable.
Exactly. If this was an M. Night movie, then that's the twist moment, is when Marcus when Alberto gets shot in the face.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I completely forgot that happened when I was watching it this time, which was great because I got to that point. I was like, oh yeah, shit, he dies. And then Jeff Bridges you see all the emotion in Jeff Bridges' character after that death. That
moment when he kind of lets out that little guttural noise, and it's such a mixture of like, I don't know, it's heartbreaking. And then again, he has this moment when he, spoilers again, but when he picks off Tanner, when he sort of snipes him from pretty far away and prevents him from doing any more damage, he just lets out this noise that's kind of, it's really hard to discern. It's like part grief, but part triumph.
It's weird because I feel like he's like, yes, I did it, but then immediately remembers, oh shit, my mate's dead. But
that moment is such a masterclass in acting. It's so subtle and so well done.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think a lot of this, I think ultimately it's the script that does a lot of the work here. But even with the brilliant script that this has, if you get lesser actors in these roles, it doesn't hit quite as well.
Yeah.
It's they're walking a very fine line with these characters. We're saying that Jeff Bridges is a curmudgeon old racist, but we're still kind of rooting for him. I feel like other actors might not be able to pull that off quite as well. We would just end up hating them.
I think the casting is perfect in this. And I think, you're right, it's a character piece when all is said and done. And I think the casting is almost like the most important component here. It's no good having such a strong, smart script if it's in the hands of people who can't deliver it properly.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think that the casting absolutely makes the movie.
Yeah, definitely. And also like Gil Birmingham, have you seen Wind River?
Yeah.
He's fantastic in that. I think he's the standout. He's not in it an awful lot, but the scenes he has, he's brilliant in. And he's also listed in a sequel to Wind River, which is, they've got an IMDb page called Wind River Rising.
Windier River,
yeah. So I'm not really sure what the plan is for that, or even if it will get made, because it's not marked as in development.
It seems like a strange film to greenlight a sequel for.
Yeah, I don't really get it either.
I think it was quite critically acclaimed, but I don't know how well it did at the box office. I don't know.
I
would watch it.
Yeah, I'd watch it too. But yeah, Gil Birmingham is great in that, and also I think because of all of the other actors are so strong in it and have such strong and a lot of dialogue, he has less dialogue and it's more reactionary to the things that are happening.
And he's very deadpan.
Yeah, but like he still has to be nuanced, and he feels lived in, this guy as well. So I just wanted to highlight his role in this, because you can talk all day about the other three because they've got the most interesting dialogue. Mostly, Gil Birmingham character does have some really cool stuff that we spoke about earlier. I think the most surprising to me when I first watched this was Chris Pine. I think in 2016 when I saw it, I was just like, oh, Kirk's in it.
I mean,
I'd seen him in, is he in that Magic Lobster movie?
Wait, what?
There's a chef and there's a lobster that's a magic lobster or something.
Is this a dream you had?
A dream about Chris Pine and a magic lobster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've told me about weirder.
This is not safe for podcast. Yeah, but I think when I saw it, I was mostly surprised by him because I'd seen Ben Foster in stuff and like, yeah, he's that gritty, good actor.
He's been a character actor for a long time. And like, I think Ben Foster is my favourite over actor.
Yeah.
Particularly in stuff like Alpha Dog, where he's just off the fucking chain.
Is he the brother in that movie?
Yes, he's the older brother of Anton Yelchin's character.
Right. Yes, I remember him in that now.
He's nuts in that movie.
He is, yeah. And he's really good in 310 to Humour as well.
Yeah.
I watched that recently.
He's had an interesting career.
He has. He was Angel in an X-Men.
Yeah. The less said about that, the better.
Didn't go well for him.
No. But you're right, like Chris Pine up until that point was kind of mostly doing like rugged sort of leading man roles more than anything else, with the exception of stuff like Smoking Aces, obviously.
Oh yeah. Yeah, since then he's done more interesting stuff. He did that virus movie. I can't remember when that came out or what that was about. Maybe that was before.
Carriers.
Maybe that was before 2016.
I want to say that was quite a few years before, maybe like 2011.
Oh, okay. Maybe that was just after the Magic Lobster movie.
Yeah, okay.
But more recently, he was in, what was that? Oh,
there was Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons.
He was really good. Like his comic timing is great.
Yes. He's obviously Steve Trevor in the Wonder Woman movie.
Yeah, he was. I never see people talk about this movie.
Wonder Woman.
But I loved it. No, Stretch.
Oh, yeah. The Patrick, I was going to say Warburton.
Patrick Wilson
one, yeah.
It's not a great film, but I enjoyed the hell out of it. And Chris Pine is so funny in that film. What a douchebag. Yeah. So he can do it all.
Well, what was that movie he was in recently? The Olivia Wilde, maybe.
Don't Worry, Darling.
Yeah, I was about to spoil that movie then. It's quite new, so I'm glad I didn't. But yeah, he was good in that as well. He was not a particularly nice character, but still had that charm. That like
he's not afraid to go against type.
Yeah, and he's perfect for Kirk as well in that role because he's like a bit of a kind of a Boy Scout, but also has something a bit more about him. Yeah, he's a bit more intelligent than that. So he's had an interesting career, but he was the most surprising to me when I watched this. And I just would like to see him in more stuff like this.
He does quiet and contemplative very well.
Yes. And would you say this is peak Ben Foster, or would you say Freaks and Geeks is peak Ben Foster? I can't. When we watched that episode and Ben Foster I was like, oh my god, you can see it's him.
Yeah. Doing his best.
Are you gonna,
Leo in What's Eating Gilbert Grape impression?
When we release this episode, are you going to do a screen grab of Ben Foster in Freaks and Geeks and put it on the internet for everyone?
I think we should, yeah.
From this to this, from Freaks and Geeks to Tanner in Hell or High Water.
How it was going, how it's going now.
Yeah, so we're at the end of the movie, aren't we?
I mean, to sort of get everybody up to speed, there's the diversion in their plan where they end up going to the busier bank, and that's where things really go tits up, and it becomes impossible to root for Tanner.
Well, he's got a slightly different plan to Toby. Toby thinks they're both going to kind of drive off together, and earlier on in the movie, Tanner has sort of said, I've got these weapons, I can't leave them in the trailer for 3 days, so we've got to take them with us. And he's obviously got this plan that he's going to create a diversion.
Do you think that was part of the plan, or do you think that was just kind of just in case, like a backup?
I think Tanner had always planned on this.
Okay.
I think his plan was always to be the decoy so that Toby could get away, because you mentioned about the Blaze of Glory stuff, and that's foreshadowed there. I'm sure that he has a line of dialogue that's similar to that as well.
Okay. So
I feel like that was always his plan, but he just didn't let on with Toby. I think he wants to go out that way. I think he.
Do you think he knew he would die?
I think so. I think he thought that it would either be death or prison, but preferably death.
Right.
Is my take on it.
Okay.
So he's just kind of going all out and he's just taking as many people out as he can before he actually goes. I think he's surprised when I don't think he's expecting to be shot and killed when he is.
I find
he doesn't see that coming.
No, I think there's a certain arrogance to him. He's not as intelligent as his brother, but he thinks he's more intelligent than he is. I think he thinks he's one step ahead.
Yes, that's true. And they have that scene at the gas station early on in the film when those people are quite aggressive to Tanner, and Tanner's just quite relaxed. Come on, boys, you'll think there's 10 of me.
Yeah.
And then Chris Pine's character comes out and he hits them and then they're on their way. So yeah, you're right. He is very arrogant, but I feel like that was always his plan. Maybe not, but that's my reading on it. And that's why he's taken this extra weaponry. That's why they've got this extra car so that he can eventually be a decoy for the police.
Okay. Well, that definitely makes the recklessness, I don't know, a different read on it now. Yeah,
so Jeff Bridges has... Tanner's gone up a small hill, right? And he's just picking people off with his sniper rifle.
Yeah.
That's where Alberto gets shot. And then Marcus kind of sneaks up the hill behind him with the civilian with their sniper rifle, and he takes out Ben Foster's character.
Yeah, he kind of has a moment where he's like, no, I have to be the one to do this. I have to enact vengeance.
Justice. Yeah, he wants vengeance for Tanner having shot Alberto. And I think that Foster is surprised by that, but he's just kind of sitting on the rock, and it's very matter of fact. There's no, it's not glorified. You're not like going, yes, or I'm kind of like bummed out. Like, even though Tanner is a bad dude with slices of goodness in him, he's a bad dude who murders people, but I still didn't want him to die. That's the curious thing about this movie. I still kind of just wanted him to be apprehended and get taken to jail.
But I think that happens, though. It's, again, more evidence for how good the writing is, because characters don't have to be likable, they just have to be interesting. And everybody in this was deeply interesting, even the side characters that were there for a single scene and then we never see them again.
Yeah,
everybody had substance.
Yeah. And then that's the last time we see Tanner, who's just having been shot on the rock.
Yeah.
And there's an image of a snake next to him as he's just been shot. A snake is like an evil, bad thing, right?
Serpents,
like imagery.
like bad omens.
But when I see a snake, I always think of the Ouroboros. I always think of that. And that again kind of fed into
the
that
cyclical nature of things. Yeah,
things for me as
Everything's doomed to repeat.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I nearly said Al Rob or Ross, because that's how I remember the spelling of Ouroboros. Ouroboros? Ouroboros? Ouroboros.
Oh. None of them sound correct anymore. You've said it too many times.
Ouroboros?
Sure. Go with that.
Al Rob or Ross.
That sounds like a character from Game of Thrones.
Yeah. But then there's some passage of time, I'm guessing, because Toby has squared things away with the bank. He's paid off the land. He's entered into a trust with the same bank, who now manage
that he was advised to do by the lawyer, who interestingly was also on their side.
He was in on the plan. He knew what they were doing. Yeah.
Also saw the banks as a bit of an evil entity.
Yeah, and he loved it. It was like, I think that's the most Texan thing you can do.
I that's something that I really appreciated throughout, actually. The way everybody, without exception, demonized the banks.
Yeah.
Everybody saw it for what it was. Like, even the patrons in the restaurant that the cops were trying to question wouldn't give them anything because they were just like, nah, fuck them.
Yeah.
Fuck Midlands.
And that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Like, the bad guys in this movie is the bank.
Yeah.
It's super well done. I've not seen anything quite like that before, where you've got the two sets of characters, the cops and the robbers, and you're rooting for both of them. And the only people you want to see get screwed over is the bank.
Yeah.
It's brilliantly done.
And again, the people who we see working at the banks are the most polite and proper people in the entire film.
Yeah.
But they're the worst.
Yeah. So he pays off the land, and there's oil on the land. So he sets up the trust with the bank and leaves the land to his children. And then there's just oil pumping away, which is at the end of the movie. And that's when we get Jeff Bridges' character coming back. He's obviously retired by this point, and the investigation has been wrapped up. The banks are not really being very helpful with the investigation because now that Chris Pine's character has the trust with the bank, they're now making money from the oil, which is why that lawyer kind of suggested to them to put the trust in the bank's name. And it's just a brilliant case of covering your tracks and thinking ahead as well. But yeah, so Marcus goes to the police station and says, I know I don't work here anymore, and I know I'm a civilian, but can I have those confidential police files, please? And they're like, sure, Jeff Bridges, take them. Just take copies. Just if you leave them at a restaurant, don't worry, we'll just come back and like, no, that's not happening, is it? But for the sake of the story, Jeff Bridges gets hold of the papers and he finds out about his brother and goes and visits Toby on the ranch that he's now left to his children. And they have that final conversation. I was going to say confrontation because it's not quite a confrontation.
It isn't.
It's a preamble to a confrontation, isn't it? Yeah. That's what's so interesting about that ending to me.
It's a very tense scene because Chris Pine's character is kind of very relaxed, but is holding a shotgun.
Yeah.
And kind of tilts it at one point to make sure Jeff Bridges kind of knows, I have this. Yeah. I will use it if you force me to.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting moment. They're both very calm.
It's like there's aggression underneath and maybe some hatred, but also a mutual respect.
Respect, yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting the way that it's done because each character has wronged the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Pine set into motion a plan that ultimately killed
several
Alberto
people
and other innocent people. Yeah, but then also Jeff Bridges' character is the one that killed Tanner. So both have got beef with the other one.
Yeah,
but as we said, like a mutual respect, and it's just like they're having that conversation through gritted teeth,
mm-hmm.
and they know that neither of them can really act on anything at the moment. But why don't you swing by sometime and we'll finish this conversation? And Chris Pine says, oh, maybe I'll give you some peace. And maybe Jeff Bridges goes, maybe I'll give it to you. And you're just like, oh, I want to see that.
What do you think happens after the credits roll?
Well, I think I've been thinking about this. I think Toby is obviously happy that his children are set for life now,
mm-hmm.
but is regretful of the way that things went down. His brother's dead, innocent people are dead, and I think he's probably feeling the weight of those decisions that he made. So I think he's probably going to be quite happy to go, but then at the same time, maybe Jeff Bridges is as well. There's no way to tell, but I think they're going to have a bloody good conversation. Maybe there's going to be a shootout.
I don't see either of them backing down.
No, maybe they become best mates.
Maybe there's a buddy movie in there.
yeah, that's the sequel, isn't it? They buddy up and they fight a graboid.
I would watch that.
So would I.
I'm not going to lie.
So would I.
So that about takes us to the end of the film. Something that I think is really interesting to mention and kind of a crying shame is that it tested really well with audiences. Obviously has quite a reasonably big name cast.
Yeah.
Jeff Bridges and Chris Pine, certainly.
Especially Bridges, because he won that Oscar, didn't he? He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for this.
Yeah, I can see why. Yeah. But it did not receive any major publicity. It was barely released in cinemas.
Yeah.
And apparently it's because the advertisers didn't want to be associated with a film promoting retribution against financial institutions who feed off the working class.
Interesting, isn't it?
I think what's really interesting is that if it had been released maybe 3 years later, I think that could have been quite different.
Yeah.
Because it's actually quite de rigueur to kind of take a pop at the rich now.
It's very fashionable, isn't it?
Yeah. Things like Triangle of Sadness and Glass Onion and Succession, I guess, to a lesser degree.
Yeah.
The White Lotus. There's a lot of content that's kind of poking fun at the rich.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think if it had just been released 4 years later, it could have done really big numbers.
Yes, for this type of film, I think it could have been way more successful. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think it was made for like $12 million, which is
that's impressive.
So cheap, isn't it?
Especially
when you consider the cast that they've got in this. And I think it grossed $38 million. So it did well by its own standards. And if it had a limited release, that's even more impressive.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible if it indeed did have a limited release. Yeah, bummer that they didn't want to show the banks being screwed over.
Isn't it a shame?
Yeah. But there's loads of bank robbery movies. But I guess the
I know,
difference here
like-
is that, as we've said in the episode, the banks are the bad guys.
Yeah.
And it's clear that they are the bad guys. I guess that the banks are often shown as the victims in a traditional heist or crime movie, aren't they?
Yeah, or at least the people who work there,
Yeah.
the individuals affected. But yeah, I don't know. Everyone was kind of a victim in this in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, they were.
No easy answers.
Are we done?
Yeah, I'm really glad we covered this.
Yeah. It's a good one for criminals.
Yeah, as I say, this was my third watch. I think I get more out of it with each watch.
I think I do too, as well. And I think because I know what the events that are going to happen in the movie, I'm paying more attention to the dialogue and going, oh, wow, it really is all feeding into this whole narrative that they're trying to tell. So, yeah, I'm with you there. I enjoy it more and more with each watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like a 9 out of 5 for me. It's great.
9 out of 5.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. No, I think this movie's excellent. It's probably in my top 10 of the last 10 years, maybe.
Good enough to break your scoring metric.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a strong 4 out of 5 for me, but you know I'm a little bit stingier than you are. Yeah. It's a hard recommend. I think it's one of those rare films where there isn't somebody I wouldn't recommend this to. I
was thinking that earlier, actually. Yeah, it kind of feels like it would have a mass appeal for people.
It's a good all-rounder.
Yeah, it's a good all-rounder. I would definitely recommend this to anyone as well.
Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can stay up to date with us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok at @STH_pod or support us on Patreon. Everything will be linked in the description.